Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Bruce. My friends call me Fluff. Welcome to another episode of I Call Top Bunk. And today we have a very special episode with a dear old friend of mine, John from the home team. I have known John for almost, 17-ish years. I've known him since he was a kid, basically, since we were both kids. And he is just an amazing person. I love him so much. And his band is incredible. If you haven't checked out the home team, definitely go check them out. Their new album, Crucible of Life, is out now on Thriller Records. And I am once again without my lovely, handsome co-host, Hans. He is on the other side of the state as I film this. And it's just a really great episode. It was so wonderful to actually hang out in an official capacity with John. I'm always thankful of the times I get to meld work with my friends. And without further ado, here's John from the home team. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of I Call Top Bunk. I'm here with my dear friend and amazing songwriter, guitarist, and all-around handsome guy, John from the home team.
Can you believe how much he's lying already?
That's
We're not
even
a minute into this.
Dude, this podcast is about survival of the music industry, and I can't think of any better guest to have on this show than you and anyone from the home team. You guys have such an interesting story. But first, I want to talk about your earliest days of guitar playing, and I want to talk about your musical influences and kind of how you grew into where you are now. But first, was there an album that made you go, I want to play guitar?
Oh yeah. There
Do you remember
sure
it?
is. How could I forget? It is Megadeth's Rust in Peace.
It was Megadeth.
Yes.
I would not have guessed that.
So now this
that.
isn't it. So my brother had this metalhead friend who was like showed us a bunch of music, and then that was the first record I think he showed us. And I remember thinking, like, at the time I had never heard anything like that. Like nothing, because like I was listening to like the radios, like rap, R&B and stuff like that, which I still love dearly.
Of course.
But that was the first time I was like, whoa, I didn't know a guitar could sound like that.
That was not a mainstream thing. Although, interestingly enough, in that time of metal, they were playing arenas that were not on the radio, so you didn't have access to that, right?
No, never did. And then, kind of once I found that, I was like, man, I want to play like that. And let me be clear, I never could play like that. I sure tried my best.
Of course.
But, I think it kind of when I discovered, basically it's kind of when I discovered thrash metal at 16, I was like, holy shit, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. So at this time, what were you listening to before Megadeth?
So and I will die on this hill too. 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Trying, one of my favorite records, still to this day.
I would argue that was the last true gangster album.
Oh, interesting.
Gangster rap album, right? Mm-hmm. Like in the actual essence of the 90s, Dre, Snoop, that was the last of that
kind of era. Yeah, I could see that for
actual
sure.
dudes getting shot. Not that we want that.
No, but yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, he was a hard motherfucker. Still is a hard motherfucker.
Dude, 100%.
So. Yeah, so that was kind of what I was listening to prior to that, and then it was then kind of heavy metal just took over my life for the next, forever.
Do you think there's a correlation between? So I did the same thing. I'm quite old, but for me it was Dr. Dre's The Chronic that absolutely blew my mind in 7th grade. Mm-hmm. And then I discovered, Nevermind comes out, and I think there's always a correlation between the groove, I guess. Maybe it's the groove of the hip hop and R&B stuff. Mm-hmm. What do you think that is for that in metal? Is it the groove? Is it the percussiveness?
I think for me at the time, I remember, because there are a lot of groove metal bands and stuff like that, which are really badass.
Sure.
But I feel like a lot of stuff, at least with thrash, I remember being really drawn to just how fast and just aggressive everything sounded. While there was just such an edge to it that I feel like other genres just don't get. You don't
really
get that, and you don't really get it anywhere else besides metal and thrash metal.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. For me, it was I couldn't. So being 12, 13 and just angry at everything. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't identify with what the things that Dr. Dre was talking about. I didn't live in Compton.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I lived in Federal Way, Washington. But this Nirvana record, this In Utero record, like really spoke to me. I wish I had a father, but still I had a dad. And so it was lyrically what got me going in that direction. But I think musically, like much like there's a lot of correlation between like the best guitar players usually start out as drummers, right? Like Dave Grohl, like there's a percussive element to that, and like so, I don't know, but it's different for everybody. So
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
totally.
It was Megadeth.
Yeah. And very funny too, after, I discovered Rust in Peace, now I have a lot of tattoos, but the first tattoo I really wanted, and I'm very glad this didn't work out.
Please say Megadeth tattoo.
I want not only just a Megadeth tattoo, I wanted my back to be the Rust in Peace album artwork, which, to be clear, is a cool looking album cover.
Cool. Awesome.
And if you got it done by a good tattoo artist, dope. I was 18. I wasn't going to get that done by a good artist. I was broke. So like I'm just thrilled I never went through with that, because I would just have this huge, horrible back piece if I did.
How do you feel now about band tattoos and getting?
Oh yeah, I'm into it. I think even if something happens where like maybe you move on from the band or something, I think it's still like if it made that much of an impact on you, then it's okay to like immortalize that on your skin, right?
Yeah. I totally agree. Tattoos are, I mean, I don't know how you feel about, now we're going way off on a tangent, but tattoos, but tattoos are such a personal thing. And I try to be cognizant of, at the end of the day, it's getting drawings on yourself.
Yeah,
like, it's
literally
not,
somebody
let's not make it too crazy deep, right?
And I feel like also, like, at least when I was younger, I was like, everything's got to have meaning. And now that I'm older, I'm like, daggers are cool. So I got a little dagger here.
Daggers are sick.
Daggers are sick. I got a mace the little lower. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just cool, man.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so Megadeth's a springboard for you. What was after Megadeth for you?
Well, I think the natural progression, I think when you kind of get into the thrash world, you're like, well, who else is here, right?
Sure.
So, Metallica obviously was next. And for me, that was like, I think also as I got older, like, I mean, no shade to Megadeth or anything, like, I have just grown to love Metallica a lot more. And also for me, it was really cool to see Kirk Hammett, because, he's also half Filipino. And I remember, I'm also half Filipino. So seeing that was like, whoa, like, it's cool that there's like a guy that like has a similar background.
It can be done.
It can be done. A similar background to me, like shredding on guitar. People love him, doing all this stuff. He's like, like just my quintessential guitar hero.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Like, it's cool that like a guy like that can do that and like shred and like be, at that level.
Yeah.
And then obviously Slayer as well. Those are, anyone in the big four. Anthrax wasn't really my band. They're much more
me either. Although I
love them too.
and
They
respect them.
for sure. I mean, like Cotton and Mosh, it's like badass. Like,
Of
they do
course.
such cool shit. But, I think I was much more into like, I feel like they were kind of more on like the punk side of things, which I think punk is cool and everything. But I was way more on like, I want the fast speed riffs
Sure.
and, in your face, bullshit that, you get from all the rest of them.
Yeah. For me, it was Megadeth. I was never a Megadeth guy. They just weren't that accessible for me. I just didn't. I don't know, the melody. Like Metallica had the melody, but the big grooves, and I never wanted to be Hammett. I wanted to be Hetfield.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the rhythm guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is he playing all downstrokes? How is this possible?
And, we were just talking earlier about how we just saw them, and man,
What were your thoughts on? We were talking off camera before we started the episode. I went and saw night 1 of Metallica. You just saw night 2
Yep.
last night. You had some thoughts about the show in general.
yeah. I think the first thing is that like they might be old, but they could still bring it. So
That was my thoughts as well. I was so impressed.
so impressed by them, and like just like they played like 2 hours. Like I'm struggling with 40 minutes. Dude, what I
right?
mean? Like 40 minutes is a lot for me, So I think the fact that they can do 2 hours, and then not only do 2 hours, but sound great, the whole way through, but also still sound human, like they didn't play a perfect set. And I love that. I think it's actually really cool that, you could still hear somebody, miss a note. And I think that's really cool. It's part of like them being like human and like rocking out. And,
It's a performance. That's an interesting. I had the same takeaway, and I was explaining to my daughter and my girlfriend, who were also with me at the show. they were asking me how some of the technical stuff worked and all that kind of stuff. And it occurred to me that like Metallica is probably the last big stadium band that we will see in our lifetime that is imperfect in the most beautiful, perfect way.
Yeah.
Because now in our world, it's everything is gridded, everything is tracked, and there's nothing wrong with enhancing your performance at all. I'm not knocking anyone who does any of that stuff. However, I like hearing the human element of things, especially something as heavy as Metallica can
Yeah,
be.
I mean, you see, Kirk is like rocking out really hard while trying to shred a solo, and like, he misses a note or two, but it's like it doesn't
Great.
matter because it's like he was performing and like really into it, and it's so cool to like, after all of these years, he's still just like as in love with the instrument as he was like on day one.
It's so inspiring.
Very inspiring.
Yeah, I was just so impressed with the quality of it. Almost seemed like they were kind of loosely going for the appropriate tones per the song. And I could be wrong about that. I don't know that for sure. But like there was a long period of time where everything was so undergained as far as the guitar tones and like the sound just wasn't as full. And now that they're on like, the digital, they're on fractal stuff, it sounded so full and so just, it was just beautiful.
And also, I feel like mixing in a stadium's got to be a nightmare. So props to the sound guy. Multiple, probably, honestly.
Probably.
It sounded great.
I know their front of house guy is basically considered like the best front of house guy in the world.
I could tell. He's
for
very good.
For good reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, how old are you when you first discovered Megadeth?
15 or 16, around that era.
Okay. Okay, so pretty quickly you moved to thrash stuff. When does like bands like real heavy stuff like Pantera come in? Is that pretty immediate?
It's interesting. So yeah, like Pantera was shortly after Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica. But then I think basically when I used to be this like I wasn't really into like the growling or the screaming or the harsh vocals, so to speak, until I got into college, and then I heard the Black Dahlia murder, and that was like very pivotal. I remember that was the band where I was
Awesome.
like, oh, like this is working for me. Like something now clicks in my brain where I was like, where before I was like, oh, you got to be able to sing and hear the melody. No, you don't. You get that from the guitar. You can get it from other sources to get that melody that you're looking for, and then the vocals have their have their own space that they can occupy. And I think Black Dahlia, the record was Unhallowed, right? That was the first one. Blew my mind.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a fucking killer record.
Was there ever any music in your circle of friends that you were, this might sound weird, but I'm going somewhere with this, that you were not necessarily voluntarily going to admit that you listened to? Did you have any of those personal boundaries that you put upon yourself as far as your early music tastes?
Man, I feel like there's always this thing about like being embarrassed to listen. Now that I'm older and wiser, it's like, don't be embarrassed. If you like it, embrace it and just be like, yeah, this shit fucking rocks. Even if it's like, what other people might think is corny, fuck you, this shit rocks.
I had an Oasis out. I had Definitely Maybe and What's the Story, Morning Glory, and I used to hide it because my friends used to come over and I used to hide the CDs under my mattress. And then I would intentionally put the Far Beyond Driven CDs out. And the Offspring CDs cool. and the Green Day, because I loved all of those as well.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I couldn't make it make sense in my mind going from Pantera to Oasis as a 15-year-old.
Yeah, totally. You're like, I'm embarrassed that people think that I'm soft, but it's like, who gives a shit? If you like the song, it rocks.
Yeah, that's I guess.
But yeah,
what
guess
kind of?
If I had to think about it, gosh, but I never really was embarrassed of Phil Collins, but I don't think I would tell other metalheads that I was really into like Phil Collins or like
dude.
Genesis, a lot of that 80s
Bangers.
shit. Yeah, still great. All great songs, but it's like, if I'm trying to prove them, like, yeah, I listen to hard ass shit, like, no, let me put that Unhallowed up top. Let me put, and then you try to find the underground bands too, like the lesser known heroes.
Sure.
I got God Forbid. Have you heard God Forbid before? Which I love them dearly.
Shout out to Doc.
Funny, I saw him at one of the Issues last shows.
Yeah.
And I went up to him. I said, I'm going to punish you for a couple minutes here. I'm sorry. I have to do this.
Did you really?
I sure did. And I just gushed to him about how much I loved, Constitution of Treason and, a lot of their work. And he was just like, and he was so cool and so like nice and thankful about it. It was like really, it was nice for me to be like, hey, I'm just going to be like a fanboy for a second and just tell you how much I love that record. And he was very cool about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Have you ever had one of those encounters that, and you don't have to name names, but have you ever had one of those encounters where it's like, don't ever meet your heroes?
I have a couple. I think you inevitably you meet, you kind of meet your heroes, and
Of
you
course.
kind of go like, man, that kind of sucked. Actually, funny enough, I don't think this is like anyone's gonna be surprised by this, but I met Megadeth once.
Did you really? I didn't know
met
about
them. No, I
this.
met him a couple times. I met him. He had a book. This is a really dumb story. He had a book that came out, like a biography or whatever. And in the book, I remember I read. It's like one of the only few books I've read. I'm not much of a reader, so that was an amazing feat that Dave Mustaine was able to get me to do, is to read a book.
Of course.
He in the book he talks. This is kind of a little inappropriate, but in the book he talks about how he put A1 steak sauce on a lady's parts. Eats it off her parts.
What?
And I was like, wow, that's crazy. So when I was getting my book signed by him, I said, I wish I had an A1 steak sauce bottle for you to sign, because I thought I was funny. I thought that was very funny, and I thought he would think it's funny. And he goes, well, if you actually read my book, you know I don't like it. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that was a big swing and a miss. That was great. Well, I felt like a total jackass.
That sounds very, very Dave Mustaine.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like, that's one of the ones I met my hero, and I was like, that kind of sucked.
Oh, it's always great when it goes well. Like, someone like Doc is like gracious enough to just kind of,
yeah.
because we all do it, right?
Totally. And he I think even more important, he just gave me the time. I feel like as you get older, like time is the one thing I wish I had more than anything, really.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that he was able to gift me his time in that, especially like, a busy show like that, like it was really cool of him to do.
Wow. That's super cool. So at what point do you form a band or join a band?
It was college. I had a couple bands that I was into. I don't know if I love saying the first.
You don't have
one. I'll say it. It was a really, I have a lot of love for a lot of those guys in that band. It was a band called The Quiet Uprising, and we weren't very good. I don't think.
Wait, that
was like technically my first band, I think.
What?
Yeah, I wasn't, because I started playing guitar pretty late in my life. 16, I guess, is late. So I didn't start playing until I was, and I had to develop my chops. Took a couple years, and then, before I felt confident enough to like, oh yeah, well, let me get on stage. And that was the first band that I joined that was like, oh, we're gonna play shows, and I'm so grateful for those, experiences and memories, because it taught me a lot, just about how to work in a band, and that's like the hardest skill, like I feel like a lot of people can play guitar at a high level, but like, how do you function in a band as a unit?
That's playing is such a small part of doing the actual functional band thing.
Very little
like
to
it's
do,
it's
I feel
actually
like.
people skills and being in a relationship with all of these people.
Yeah, especially if you want longevity,
That's right.
in the industry, which we've known each other a lot of years. So
Yeah. So I met you. So I'm gonna tell the internet the story of how I met you. I hired in with our good friend Nick Pierce at Boeing. And we're in training together, and he is this incredibly skinny 19-year-old kid. And he goes, oh, hey, you were talking about guitar. I play drums. And I'm like, yeah, sure you do. Right? And I'm like really snarky about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, you should come over and jam at some point. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. Like, I'm 27, I'm single. I'm like, I have nothing to do. We're on second shift together, right?
Yeah.
So I go over to Nick's house, and he's like, so Nick is currently in As I Lay Dying, for those of you who don't know at home. And before that, he was in Unearth for over a decade.
Oh, yeah. And The Faceless. Which also for me was a huge band.
Yes.
And tried out for Black Dahlia,
Yes,
but
he did.
Ended up
Yes, he
not
did.
the only guy he lost to was who's the drummer that was on Nocturnal, and God, it drives me nuts. I'm not gonna be able to remember.
I remember when he got back from that.
He also wasn't, the guy who beat him was also in All That Remains, like the really good shit that we all love.
Yeah.
But he was in, that's the only guy who beat him, right? So it's like
Right.
he is just like the next level drummer.
Also the sweetest, nicest dude of all time. And so I go over to his house, and I'm immediately like, oh, I am outnumbered and outclassed here. Like
Yeah.
Nick's doing like rudiments on he's like eating mashed potatoes and doing exercises with his double kicks, and like he's talking about forming a band, and he has a band called Eterna Nocturna.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I come over, he's like, yeah, dude, you should come to practice. So I come to practice, and I meet you with hair down to the middle of your back.
Yeah,
right?
it was way cooler back then.
And you had a Crank Rev 1.
I miss it dearly.
With
I actually
the gain
miss it.
all the way up. It was full up, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm pretty sure I was like, bro, what are you doing? Right? No noise gate.
Don't need it.
So it was amazing. You were so young, but you were going for it even then. And you took the music very, very seriously. But outside of that, especially at that time, you didn't take much that seriously outside of the music.
Still don't.
What I was going to say, it's kind of how I think of you now is like, there's nothing more you take seriously than the music.
Yeah, I feel like it's like, you set a goal and you just kind of have to figure out how you get there. And honestly, like that's the time, like, all the kids are saying, lock in. That's like, you got to lock in and really figure out like how you get to the next level. And like, I think another really important lesson is actually just like looking at your peers around you and just like exchanging information and knowledge with your friends and being like, hey, what's working for you? What's not working for you? And then also if something works for you, like, hey, this worked for us, you should try this.
Do you think being in obviously there was internet and there was social media, but it was kind of the Wild West and it was kind of the dawn of the social media element. Do you think not having it as strong as if you were to have it today, starting out and doing it all over again, but right now, do you think that would have affected you differently in the outcome of where you're at right now?
Oh, 100%. And I can actually I have a story too about how, you have to really adapt with the times. So, before TikTok was really huge, I remember do you remember that? What's the Vine? Do you remember Vine?
Yes.
So Vine was like quick 7-second clip and then you move on to the next one, right? And that had died out. And I remember, Daniel, my drummer, was like, oh, TikTok's coming along. We really should get on TikTok. And I said, I don't get it. It's just another one of those. Who cares? It's going to die out in a year. Don't waste your energy.
And of course you would say that because Vine had just died. These other platforms had come and gone.
Yeah. And, I just was like, I see everything on there is so cringe. I think as you get older, all the things that young kids are doing, it's so cringe, which is so dumb. Don't be like me. Just actually embrace it. And we have friends of ours in a band called Arrows in Action. We had done some tour, like a little regional tour with them back in the, our DIY days. And they got on TikTok and then very quickly surpassed us because of TikTok. Literally got on TikTok, had a viral moment, hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners before we had that. And I was like, oh. Then it made me realize, like, I'm an idiot. I tell this every time I give Daniel his roses, like, I am sorry. I fucked up. We needed to, like, get on that platform as soon as we could because, like, you never know kind of what the next big social media is. Like, there was no predicting that TikTok was going to be the one. No. But I feel like if you're in a band and you're trying to make it and you need to, like, just get on it and just start using it, That's so important.
Where was I going with this? So in the social media realm, followers and listeners are one thing. I've always been a huge proponent. And I guess we can actually start talking about the home team. We'll back up here in just a second, but you guys are basically have proven my my theory and my point when I tell younger kids you still have to go see the people because just because 100,000, 200,000 people are listening to you on Spotify, that doesn't necessarily mean all of a sudden you're playing 5,000 Kappa rooms, right? That doesn't translate one-to-one to people coming out to see the show.
And it's so interesting too. The numbers are crazy because there are bands, I'm not going to name them, that have, over 1 million,
Oh yeah. Oh, we
over
all
1
know
million.
those bands.
And then, you see them at a show and it's like, there's, I am one of 15 people here.
That's right.
How did we get here? I don't know how that works, but to me, it's like such a fascinating phenomenon to see.
Yeah.
And I've actually always wondered this from like the label perspective. Are they happier with that? Like if they have like a lot of monthly listeners, but no one comes, like, do they care even? Is that even something that's on their radar?
That's a good question.
Because, they're making their money on the streams and stuff like that.
I was going to say, they probably don't care because you're the one who gets, you make your money through merch.
Yeah, totally.
Right? They don't care about that.
They don't care about that. Nope. They're not making a cut on that.
Hell
hopefully.
No.
If they
hopefully. We can talk about that in just a second, actually. But I think you guys have done a really unique thing. Also, the longevity. You guys consciously chose to go eat shit in the beginning. And you guys were self-booking tours. I remember hearing stories about you guys going, it's like, yeah, we're going to go play. We ended up at a coffee shop at, or whatever it was down in California. But I remember when I ran into you at a show and you're like, metal's toast, dude. I'm not going to do metal anymore.
Which is so funny because now you see like Spirit Box knocked loose and fucking just crushing it. I'm like,
but at this time, it was the tail end of like, I think everyone was a little fatigued out of the metalcore thing, like all the metal stuff, right? I remember you distinctly telling me, I'm going to do something that people are actually going to like give a shit about. So I'm going to form a pop punk band.
Yeah, which is so funny too, because I said that, I had that goal in mind, and then we released our first record, Better Off, which was a pop punk record. Didn't do well.
But you guys had a legit hit.
Yeah, I guess you could say. I mean, She's Quiet did great.
She's Quiet opened up a lot of doors for you guys. It
really did. It did open up a lot for us, which I'm very, eternally grateful for and thankful for. But I think it was such a good, important learning lesson for me because I released that record. Did, fine. Not like spectacular, but we didn't have people knocking at our door, labels or whatever, management, booking. None of what. We released the record. No one knocked. And then we all kind of came to this conclusion as a band, which was really nice, is that we were just like, look, we tried to do the quote unquote sellout thing. Didn't work.
What do we want to do?
Yeah. What do we collectively want to do? What are we listening to? And like, actually, what is the thing that we want to create? So literally, it was actually crazy to think about this, now especially, is like, because when we kind of had that conversation, COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then Uncle Sam, God bless his heart, was giving everybody money to stay at home. So for the first time in my life, I felt like, wow, this is what being a musician must feel like. You're just getting paid to stay at home and just create. So
a Canadian musician, right?
Yeah, that's so sick for them.
Or a French musician.
Or Australian.
Dude.
God damn it.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't. Well, I can because I did with the COVID stuff. But
yeah.
So basically, we just sat at home and just created what we all just were like, I don't give a shit if this sells a single record. I'm just going to be psyched that we created this and like put it out into the world. And lo and behold, it actually worked. People actually gravitated towards that more. And I think a lot of it is because instead of like chasing a sound, because this is also something I feel like I've learned too, we're done chasing a sound that's been done. I'm never going to be able to outdo Fall Out Boy, State Champs,
Newfound
Glory. I'll never be able to beat them. They've been masters at it for forever.
The Mount Rushmore of that genre.
Yeah, they crushed it. I can never beat them. But what I can do is try to do the shit that I fuck with really heavily and try to create something new out of it.
Yeah.
And then just put it in the world and just, turns out other people gravitated towards it as well, which was really, really cool for us.
I remember you wanting to so badly just change your mindset that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you went and took some guitar lessons on how to play pop guitar and try to play guitar in a different way because you were conscious of being in your own box. Yeah,
I think that's, I took a couple of guitar lessons with a couple guys, actually a really cool like thump hip hop guy named Ando-san. His playing is so cool and unique. And I think for me, just trying to go outside of my box and learn these new techniques. Like I don't do any of the thumping, but what I was attracted to was the way that he wrote songs. Yeah. I don't really usually the people I try to work with or like, on like take lessons from are people that like I love their writing style and I want to know how they got to their conclusions, because like for me in my writing, I know how I got to my conclusions, but when I hear somebody else's music that I think is super sick, I'm like, well, how did you get to your conclusion? What are you listening to? And what are the techniques that you're utilizing? And I also think YouTube has been a tremendous help. I still think about this a lot, actually. God, I can't remember his name anymore, but he is like or at least at one point was the guitar player for Miguel. And he had a bunch of he was like a PRS guy, had this beautiful guitars and shit. And he had this like lesson basically about how to like broke down like a lot of Miguel songs and like just like tips and stuff like that. And I still think about a lot of the lessons he gave in that YouTube video. Like even when I'm applying my own writing, like I think he used the term like fractions of chords. So instead of doing like a power chord, it's like, well, if you do the full chord, what are the other parts of the chord that you could use instead of the power chord, right? So you could, use the top three strings, use the top
voicing
two,
it differently.
Voicing it differently, just the fractions of chords. Like you don't have to do the full chord. Think about it and break it down in different fractions, and it can give you a pretty cool, different and unique sound. And I still apply it to this day, which is a crazy thing to think about.
What has been getting in the studio and writing? From my outside perspective, the second album rather, the second album kind of came much like my former bands did. We're like, let's just try something that's completely like, let's just do something that's cool, like that gets you off, right?
Yeah.
I remember you sending me Right Through Me.
Oh, yeah.
And you were going back and forth between including the 8-string guitars
Yeah.
and not including the 8-string guitars. And I remember myself and Mergs.
Yeah. Rest in peace. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to Mergs. Going,
Yeah,
we were wrong.
And it was really hard too because again, like you're talking about, you kind of have like a pop-ish kind of band. It's like you want to add an 8-string for the low octave, and I can tell you why I did it. Again, kind of going back to the roots of my musical background or whatever. Like I love R&B. I still do to this day.
Yeah.
And so much of R&B is on that low, crazy registry, but they hit it usually with either like an 808 or like a 5 or 6 string bass.
Yes.
So I remember thinking to myself, well, why don't I just like take an 8-string and just like put, instead of doing the 5 or 6 string bass or whatever, just play the low octave on the guitar and like give you a different sound. I use an 8-string guitar, but I'm not like a Tosin Abasi type.
Who is?
A Frederick Thorndahl,
Who is?
I can't play like those guys, but I can at least apply it in a way that is new and unique. And you don't have to be, a crazy virtuoso to do so.
Yeah. I love asking this question. I asked the Day to Remember guys this. When you're in the studio writing, are you ever thinking about how you're going to recreate something live? Or are you just in the moment, this sounds cool, let's do this? Which side are you on?
I'm on the side of whatever sounds coolest.
That's what side they were on as well.
I will figure it out. There's a song we have called Somebody Else's Face, and there's like the bridge part of it is so like that's a motherfucker to play live.
Yeah.
But it sounded so cool in the studio. I was like, we just got to do it. Like,
do you play live?
We're going to. I think on this next tour with Neck Deep that we're doing. So it should be. I'm really looking for. I'm both excited and nervous.
Yeah.
That's going to be the, if you see me going crazy and then I stop and just really stand there, you'll know why. It's probably because I'm playing that song.
I love that. I also love that you're kind of living out loud on stage in that you have, you're playing, it's kind of a dichotomy of your music is fairly funky. It's still distorted and heavy, but you have a beautiful guitar strap with the most spiky.
Yeah.
Are those legit spikes?
Oh yeah, those things are. They would
Those
fuck
things
you
look
up.
like they will bite you.
You sure could. Yeah, it's my buddy Kyle who plays in that band Vitriol on Century Media, and his band is so good and so extreme, and I love it. It's just like the heaviest, fastest. I've come as I've gotten older. I love a lot of extreme.
Sure.
So, and that strap included. So he has a company called Steel Weather Straps, and he built one for Carl from Nile. He has one as well.
Are they heavy?
Oh yeah, it's heavier than my guitar.
Oh wow!
But my Aristides, I think they're pretty light. All
they
things
are
considered.
pretty light. Yeah,
but yeah, the strap is so heavy. He's actually building me another one because I've had this one for a couple of years now, and I had to tape up the bottoms because it's getting to the point where it's like this could rip. And
sure.
At one more jump, this could just be it. So I'm having him build me a new one when he gets back because he's on tour with Goat Whore. If they're still on tour when this comes out, go see him.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're writing, do you look forward to writing? Like if you have to write a record tomorrow. I recently saw an interview with Jerry Cantrell, and he said he loves and absolutely hates writing albums because you have no sense of direction or what's up or down. You are in a black room with your eyes closed. You don't know where a song's going to go. You don't know where anything goes, and there's no sense of general direction when you're starting out. Do you feel the same way when it comes to writing an album, or are you more methodical and kind of like you have to get in a mindset and then you're fine?
I feel like it's very interesting because I feel like for me, I've had a lot of ideas for stuff I've wanted to do on records for a long time, and just honestly, a lot of times just due to budget that I don't get to do everything I want to do. So I always just kind of put a little note like, okay, well, this is maybe for the next record we could do it, and as budgets get bigger, then it's like, okay, now the feasibility of this, comes much higher now. For one example for me is that, I'm really big into like horn sections. There was a band, you probably know, Oingo Boingo.
Oh yeah. Great.
Amazing band.
Danny Elfman's band.
Danny
right?
Elfman's band. Yeah. So it's so, and that's what I love about it. It's so orchestral. And that's like, of course, no fucking brainer. He can go from that band to just being one of the best,
Of course he can.
Of course he can.
Yeah.
So, but when I listen to Oingo Boingo and like all the horns and like how like big and full it was, like I've always just wanted to do more horns. So like Slow Bloom has them, the Crucible of Life has them, but I always want to do more. So I think for me, I think about the stuff I wasn't able to achieve with the last record that I wanted to do, and then I like circle it and put like, okay, let's put it in the next record column. But there is still that element too as you're writing, the songs you're putting out, it's just like, that's where I give Jerry, it's like, you don't really know what direction this song is going until you really have like, a collection. Were you right?
Sure.
Because there might be just like, you write one song, that could just be the weird sore thumb that doesn't even make the record, You got to really have like a collection, like I feel like 4 to 5 before you're like, okay, that's the actual direction of the record.
Yeah. So when you're in the writing process, are you guys universally trying to stay cognizant of serving the song? And how do you be objective with other people when it comes to including any given part into a song? Is it we'll try everything and see what people think? Or are you taking votes? Is it Dan slapping everyone around as he does angry Dan? I'm just kidding. I love you, Dan. How do you guys work as a unit in deciding what goes in the song?
So usually we'll put it to a vote if there's like a part where like someone's like, I don't really know how I feel about this. Like one thing that's really great about our band is we're very much able to communicate and just say how we feel about it. And we've gotten better over the years about communicating it in a way that doesn't make anyone upset. Because I would also say historically, I've tried to be better about, instead of saying, oh, I don't, that part sucks. Well, maybe I don't like it, but potentially maybe my bass player Ryan likes it. Maybe Daniel likes it. Maybe Brian likes it. So you have to frame it in a way that isn't going to make someone feel like, well, fuck, I feel like an idiot.
You don't want to attack anybody.
You don't want to attack anyone. It's like, so it's like reframing it instead of being, oh, that part sucks. Like, I don't really think that part fits. Like, can we try something else? And that little frame of the mind, like just that shift will just make like longevity, right?
Sure.
No one's going to feel resentful if you say, hey, can we try something different? Like, I'm not really, it's not doing it for me, versus being, that part sucks.
I think it's important also that if you are in a band, 100% of anybody's wants will never happen, right? Like everyone has an instance of, it's not my favorite thing, but they like it, so whatever. Like that happens to everybody.
Yeah, compromise. It's a big important for any relationship. It's just be willing and able to compromise on some things.
Right.
And there are some things, if there is a hill that you're like, I will die on this hill to do it, like make your argument and make your point, but you might not win that one. But I think it's important to not let it like affect you in the future, right? Like don't hold resentment because of you didn't maybe get your way that time. But, obviously stand up for what you really like believe in and like feel very confident in, but also know that like it may or may not happen. And then, if you're right, then you could rub it in their face later.
my one thing I like to tell people is, so for Drag Dunder's first record, we were an independent band. We had zero money. We made the whole thing in a bedroom over just a couple of days, writing and everything.
Damn.
And all the guitar tones are a Kemper and a JST Jason Richardson plugin. And I hated that. It sounds fine on the record because Matt Good did an incredible job mixing it. However, I hated that being what I do.
Yeah.
I'm amp guy, right? I have a gazillion amps. Why can't I use reamps? There was no time and there was just no way to really get it done. So the second record comes and the rest of the guys are like, yeah, who cares? No one's going to care, dude. Let's just use plugins. And I'm like, no. So I flew down to Matt's on my own dime and I went and we reamped and used all real shit.
And let me tell you, even if, maybe the average listener doesn't, maybe they don't understand or whatever, you do.
That's right.
And you created it. And you want to be happy with what you created.
To this day, I'm like, man, those guitar tones are so bad.
And it's worth every penny.
Fuck yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually kind of where I'm also very old school too. I still bring cabs on stage. The ancient dinosaur that I am.
Are they on?
They are.
Good for you.
I have a power amp, a VHT 292 that powers those motherfuckers with the Axe effects, and it
Bless
sounds,
your back.
Yeah,
Oh
truly.
God,
But I'm a
dude.
firm believer of like, when I was a kid, younger guy going to shows and stuff like that, like it was such a part of the experience to feel that
I
come
agree.
into your face,
I agree.
and even though like I'm the one suffering for it, I still think it's important because that might be someone's first show, and like having that sort of energy still in the room could change their life.
Have you ever been towards the front or the middle of a bigger, wider stage show, and there's just nothing in the center because it's all PA?
Yeah.
I hate that.
I hate it too.
That
So it's like
sucks.
having the cabs really helps for that. And obviously, like, I'm very thankful I have other band members who will help me load these cabs.
Bless them.
Bless them. Also my power amp rack unit thing is so fucking heavy. Bless them for loading that as well. We all take turns at doing that stuff. But I think it's, again, like, we all are kind of roughly the same age. So we all kind of grew up going to shows where, like, you had, your half stack, you crank that motherfucker up and, just try to compete with the drums and you let it rip.
I mean, I get the convenience of, this is going into a whole other thing of the convenience of digital, right?
Yeah.
So you toured actually forever with a big old pedal board.
I had a big old pedal board.
And it sounded great when it worked.
That's the thing, right? When it worked. I had the Bogner Shiva. I still have that head to this day. I will never get rid of it. It is just an incredible head.
Yeah.
And,
that was your sound.
that was the sound. And I used it on the last record too. Like, it was all the A string tones, I think, are through the all the A string tones are through the Bogner. And it's just, you get to a certain level and things just have to work. Like, there's I don't have time to like, oh,
no.
this is and then I feel like for me too, when I was playing with the pedal board, I remember that I had the realization when we did our tour with Real Friends, where I had the pedal board and I'm playing and I'm like, all this will take is one cable to ruin my night. One cable. That's true to every rig, right? One cable will ruin your night.
Yeah.
But when you have a pedal board, I had a switcher with 8 pedals, all in individual loops.
I mean, you had that when we toured. Mm-hmm. And there was, every few nights there was, John's having a problem. Let's get in there.
Then you have to figure out. And then, it's something as dumb as like, a cable, not even like broke. It just like, on the way.
It's being weird.
Yeah. It just went loose on the travel day, like to the show. It just, cable got loose. And that's one cable that ruins your whole
Do
night.
you handle, because things will inevitably go wrong in some way, shape, or form at some point, whether it's large or small. Do you handle things differently now versus, I don't know, even 5 or 10 years ago? Or is it all just kind of like, meh, whatever, things happen?
It's interesting now, like as the stakes get higher, so to speak, what I mean by that is like, there are people at the shows now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times too, like I remember, you'd have a bad show and it's like, who fucking cares? I just played to the other bands. But now the stakes are higher. So and also like, I think everybody in the band now is so used to like a certain standard that we set. And if we fall short of that, it's like, it's a bummer. But the important thing is that you can't let it affect you as little as you can. I still struggle with this. Like if something wrong, happens at the show, it's sometimes very hard to get that out of your head, but it's something that I at least know I do, and I know I have to work on. And I think that's like one of the most important things is like, if there's an issue, knowing that there's an issue and being aware of the issue and then trying your best to overcome it and try different scenarios to like get through it. I think one of the big things is like, if you have a bad night, don't let it affect the next night.
No.
Like sucks, talk about what happened, things you could do to make it better.
Sure.
And make sure, like how could we make sure this doesn't happen again? But don't let it go bleed into the next night, or the one after that.
Also, chances are no one in the crowd notices anyway. They don't care.
They don't care.
Depending on what it is, obviously.
Yeah.
If the vocal's still going, it's fine. And when they meet you at the merch booth later that night, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, that's funny too, because actually on the last tour there was a night where like the MIDI switching didn't work and I had to do it all manual, which I hated. Which also, by the way, I'm so spoiled. I'm so spoiled now. Like
you're auto switching the Fractal.
Oh yeah, I'll do MIDI. But this night just couldn't get the MIDI to trigger, and so I had to do it all by.
But you knew about it ahead of time. It wasn't working.
Sort of. It like worked and then it didn't work. So I had to like go. We got through the set, and I was pretty upset about it. I won't lie to you. I was pretty upset. And I was talking to some people, some fans or whatever, and I was like, I had some technical difficulties, and not one of them knew.
Nope.
No one knew.
That's right.
And I was like, wow, actually, I shouldn't. And that was like an important thing. Like, don't get so upset about it, because realistically, if like I'm still able to like make the switch. Maybe my performance isn't 100, but everybody else is still doing good. And that is the important part. Like just get through it, and hardly will anybody will notice. The only people who will notice are people who've seen you a ton or other bands, really. And even then they're going to be like, yeah, that sucks. Like everybody goes through technical difficulties.
Happened to me too, bro.
Yeah, literally happened to me earlier this tour. Actually, I just want to talk about this because it was so funny on the tour. Potter, who plays for Stan Atlantic, he I love him dearly. We were in Denver. I'm just talking about technical difficulties. We're in Denver, and I'm watching him side stage, and he looks at me during, it must have been the first or second song. He looks at me and he points at me, and then he takes, puts his hands on his neck, and he's going to do a guitar flip. He, all of his force, the guitar strap ripped from and literally flung into the drum riser, broke the neck.
What?
So, and I literally like, oh fuck. So I run and grab one of my Aristides, tune it up to their tuning, or tune it down rather, because they play in drop C, I think. So I tuned it down for their tuning. I'm like, here you go, man. And I was just like, you know what? Everybody has those nights, technical difficulties, whatever,
Ooh, I never had anything that bad. That's severe.
It was very severe. I had something close when I was first playing. That's actually funny. My strap will not allow me to do that because it's so heavy and has the spikes. So I'm thankful for that. But I know there was one time playing Hell's Kitchen down in Tacoma.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to do it for the first time. So I do the thing. And then I felt my headstock hit the speaker next to me. And I remember I put my hands over my face and said, oh, I just broke my guitar. Because I did all my strength. Didn't do it. Shout out Ibanez. Make strong ass guitars. Didn't break it.
Was that the black Ibanez?
I still have it. Yeah.
No way.
I still have it. Yep. I put a little MIDI pickup in there too. Just to, like fuck around with it. It's cool.
Cool.
Still a great guitar.
I can't believe you still have that.
Still have it. Well, I don't think it's like, what am I going to do? Sell it for $200?
No.
It has so much more like sentimental value to me.
When are you going to get a Crank Rev one?
As soon as one comes up on fucking...
Oh, dude, I never see those.
I know. No one has them.
No.
And I think that they are just an incredibly hard amp because they have a thing called the sweep. You remember the sweep?
Yeah.
The sweep is a very weird knob because what it does is it totally shifts the EQ. And so if you have the thing set, your EQ, your bass, mid, treble, all set one way, if you use the sweep, it's going to completely change the sound. And then you have to readjust. So it's a weird like balance between like the sweep knob and the rest of the EQ.
I've thought about getting one. I think historically looking back, it was too easy to make it sound bad.
Very easy to make
and
it
not
sound
easy
bad.
enough to make it sound good.
That is precisely it. You can make them sound amazing.
Yes, you can.
But it takes a certain, I feel only a handful of guys really know how to like, work that amp the way. And also, you don't need any more amps.
That's not true. That's not true. I brought one. It's in my car for you.
I know, the
today.
Soldano SLO.
Yeah.
I'm also gonna buy one because I'm always like, Daddy Fluff, please help me. And so it's like, I think it's just something I'm gonna use for the rest of my life, my career, and it's just there. It does something very unique and very special, and I had to have it.
It's a very, very wonderful amp, and I am very proud that you used it on your new record.
It's one of the best amps. For me, I remember first hearing the Soldano SLO, and it was the first time I felt like when the guitar player, he played, I remember hearing it come out and being like, whoa, like the amp wanted to have that note escape. There was so much like thump and like really pleasant low and mids. That was just like, fuck, everything was so clear. And that was like, I was like 18 or 19 when I first heard it. And I still remember that so vividly, like that feeling of like, holy shit, like that is like that is like the sound I want.
That the first time I ever plugged into one, I didn't know anything about gear. I was 16 years old. My band was recording, and the house that we were at was like a home studio thing. And it was Howard Leese's house from Heart, and he had a.
How did you get to be here?
So Randy Hansen, if you don't know who Randy Hansen is, Google that, kids. He's basically, he plays Hendrix stuff. He's not a Hendrix impersonator, but he does a tribute
band
to Jimi Hendrix,
Yeah.
but he's done it for 30 years.
Cool.
And he's incredible.
Yeah.
And he was basically house sitting Howard's house in the mid 90s while Hart was on tour.
Cool.
Because they're really good friends or whatever.
Sure.
So we went over to his house, and he had a green neon snake skin Soldano SLO 100.
I love that.
which I later found out, Mike Solano told me it was SLO number 2 ever made.
That's number 2.
Number 2. The cord hanger on the back.
Who was it for?
Howard Leese.
Oh, so that's just okay. Because I saw
yeah.
that there was a list that came out. I think it was on your channel actually. Like it was like a somebody had
That's
sent
right.
you like just like the list of like the first 100 or whatever.
Yeah. Howard Leese is number 2.
Whoa,
Yeah, pretty cool.
that's very cool.
And I didn't know anything about amps or
Yeah.
anything, and we were finding tones, whatever, and all these Marshalls were cool. And this Soldano amp was like the sound. You hit a chord, and you're like, it just wants to. It's so in your face.
Yeah.
But so clear, but so distorted. I didn't know amps could have that kind of gain.
Yeah.
Without a pedal.
And also so many amps too. It's like you turn up the gain, it just gets like fizzy. It gets a little weird.
Not with the Soldano.
Not the Soldano. No, it really doesn't.
Pretty
And
crazy.
I still don't. Some wizard shit that he does.
Yeah, dude.
Super cool.
Yeah, Mike actually lives like a mile from me.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty nuts. But Soldano SLO 100, kids, if you want the John sound.
That's
Are
the
you
one.
using that for your live patch as well? Are you what are you using in the Fractal?
It's actually the It is the Axifex one. I just take the
It is.
Solano. That's low. Yeah, that's what I want.
Oh, that's amazing. Dude,
Oh, yeah.
John, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Dude, for sure, man.
I really appreciate you. I love the hell out of you. And are you hungry? We should go
I'm
get some lunch.
starving. Let's go.
All right, we're gonna get some lunch. See you, kids.
See ya.